Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing abrupt climate change. So I'm basically presenting articles from mainly mainstream and alternative publications about the perils of climate change. Obviously, through the lens of those aware that climate change is happening much faster than expected. That's what this channel is mainly about. I suppose you would consider this channel in the realm of doom, or perhaps some might call it a rabbit hole. We know it's bad. We have very stark and obvious evidence that things are very bad. I don't think anyone can say that the impending total loss of Arctic sea ice in the next 5 years can be a good thing. The thing that's not being discussed in the mainstream news is, what does this mean? We know what it means, but there's not just a lack of coverage of climate change. It's mostly surface allusions to climate change being responsible for weather events. I find it absolutely alarming on all levels that no mainstream news stations are talking about the ongoing loss of sea ice. And if they do, it's only in reference to our ability to exploit the newly opened waterways. People have to know. Also, people know and don't know what to do with the realization of where we're at. That's why we're here. That's what this channel is about, to be a space for those in the know to feel a little less alone. Hopefully, as the realization grows, these spaces will grow in healthy ways so that we can find our way through the fog a little less alone, a little more sane, and possibly with more tools at our disposal to weather the coming years. I'm going to start off with a few comments from, these are from today, in response to the last video. This is from Warrior 001. It is not a virtue to conform oneself to a profoundly sick society, one based on greed, racism, violence, and exploitation. Hello, little moth. I have a friend. He's hanging out with me on my computer right now. Our economic reality is modern day slavery. Debt equals slavery. Perpetual debt equals perpetual slavery. We allow a small group of private bankers to print our money supply, and we allow them to charge interest for doing so. Federal Reserve. This is the mechanism used to enslave us economically. I had an epiphany the other day. I felt it was a very sober but accurate understanding of the state of our country. America is in a steep decline on all fronts. I feel that life for the average American has become so stressful, so economically difficult. We see the rise of problems like this heroin epidemic or meth epidemic. So many are quietly suffering. In addition, here in our debt and death-based economy, our tax dollars are used to create bombs sold to Saudi Arabia and used to indiscriminately kill civilians in Yemen. Sad state of affair these days. I work myself to exhaustion in a full-time job, yet I always struggle to just get by. No benefits, no health care, no pension, etc. Our economic system is a failure, in my opinion, and a large portion of the public are left without a seat here in our silly little game of musical chairs. Love and kindness, heck, just simple decency are in short supply these days, along with honesty, which no longer seems to be a virtue. Reading and education are no longer valued, and we are now herded like cattle into low-paying jobs, just spokes in someone else's money-making wheel. Thank you, Warrior 001. I really like that comment. And reading and education are no longer valued. It's an interesting, that is a phenomenon. We glorify stupid, and we glorify, obviously, anti-intellectualism. We glorify just, kind of low level, low vibrational selfishness. You know, many sections of society think that this is like awesome, you know, to get a big ass truck and like just live, you know, super grandiose and just like, you know, try and make as much money as you can and try and just like try and just get all the things that you can in kind of like a very crass and base way. And meanwhile, just like, you know, giving the finger to anyone who might be like better off than you or smarter than you or, you know, more wise than you, or, you know what I mean? It's just kind of like a fuck you buddy attitude. And I don't know, that's kind of just been, that's a very American, I think that's a uniquely American outlook, but I agree. In many parts of society, reading and education, or, you know, living with higher purpose, or bettering yourself, or becoming a better person, not bettering yourself like in an economic way. Becoming a better person is like whatever to a lot of people. I'm going to move on to a comment from Physicus. Many articles being written, as well as many comments responding to them, seem steeped in the concept that humans are intended to be mechanized and controlling of their environment. The lessons that humans have for most part completely missed with the collapsing of each of their civilizations since the beginning of agriculture are that humans cannot have these things, nor can they be in charge of the environment. They, like everything else, must live as equals within and with respect to the environment. For those people that believe that technology can produce solutions for this, climate destruction, I strongly urge and recommend you research the processes of acquiring and refining and moving the materials necessary. I know that I'm repeating myself with many of these comments, but the underlying truth keeps repeating itself in response to human activity. A wind turbine or solar panel that required fairly monumental biotope destruction for it to exist does not even have the relative return in regard to its energy output production over its fairly short lifespan. The electronics needed to operate these devices are very short-lived. The rare earths they require are extremely toxic, as well as being extremely destructive to the environment. The electromagnetic sphere that envelops the earth from core to space is affected by movements of materials. In the past, civilizations collapsed just from water and soil degradation caused by agriculture and forest destruction on a local scale. Today, humans practice these same things, but much farther reaching. Through industry, humans can perform these concepts deep into the earth and beyond its atmosphere. They can hide many of the effects from their view by location through the means of technology. It is still the same perilous practice and will always have the same result. The only thing that changes is how far reaching and how lasting this effect. At the point an entire species chooses to manipulate its environment through non-biological means, they cease to evolve, for the most part, with the environment. This is the end of that particular genetic line. We are given a specific set of boundaries to live within. We are surrounded by wonders of beauty and wisdom in the form of lasting life that has existed for millions upon millions of years through many, many disastrous times. Yet we as a species choose to ignore this wisdom and create our own paradigm over and over again for nearly, if not 200,000 years. While I realize how far-fetched it may seem to entertain the idea of living without electricity or cars or planes, etc., humans are faced with learning and realizing this concept either on their own terms or on nature's terms. This is the only choice actually being offered. Thank you, Physicus, for that comment. I liked that as well. I'm going to move on to some articles regarding Florence. This is from The Guardian. No one comes to help us. This is from today. Florence cleanup highlights Wilmington's stark social divide. In the largely black neighborhood of Northside, the power is out and resources are scarce. In wealthier Monkey Junction, it's a different story. Shakori Blanks didn't know Hurricane Florence was coming towards our home in Wilmington, North Carolina until just hours before landfall. The 31-year-old doesn't have a television. She can't afford one, and she doesn't listen to the radio. Her nephew told her about it. But as the wind howled outside, there was an added danger in this part of town. Bullets zipping by outside her window in the Houston Moore housing complex. They were shooting the day Florence came out. They were shooting, she said. Bullets could have hit anybody in the wind, she said, shaking her head. Families and friends crowded a front porch strewn with children's bicycles, scooters, and cleaning spray, watching an American Red Cross van at the end of the block hand out a hot meal of rice and ground hamburger with a side of green beans and whole wheat bread. If I have to eat one more meal of rice and beans, Blanks trailed off. Standing on her mother's porch, one of her nephews sat by the bottom of the uneven brick steps, eating his meal, and shrugged. Blanks wiped her face and lit a cigarette. Another sweltering day, post-Florence, she shooed her nephews and niece inside and up the stairs of the house. Because it's hot, she told them, shutting the front door closed. She turned back and said, I've been keeping them in the house since the storm because they'd be witnessing some stuff, referencing the lootings and fights breaking out. Blanks' mother is the only person in the family to have power, so Blanks has moved into her apartment along with most of her family. She's contemplating driving over to Monkey Junction, a mostly white neighborhood where electricity is back in most parts and restaurants are serving people until the 9 p.m. curfew, to get a hot meal with the $90 she has to her name. Where Blanks is standing now, Wilmington's North Side is a historically and predominantly African-American neighborhood. On any given street, sitting on porches, most people are out during the day for a brief respite from the suffocating heat. A couple of miles down the road, past the perfectly painted and mowed lawns just blocks away from Blanks' childhood home, Peggy White, who lives near Monkey Junction, was sitting at a counter at an air-conditioned Whole Foods that opened up again on Monday with hot macaroni and cheese and chicken teriyaki. White hoped to charge her phone because the one thing Blanks' family had that she didn't was power. Other than that, 63-year-old White had an undamaged home, a full tank of gas, and all the free Wi-Fi she could want. A recent transplant from Maryland, White has weathered Hurricanes Matthew and Florence unharmed. I was looking for a place by the beach, and my daughter is also going to graduate from University of North Carolina, Wilmington, so I like it here. I was going to move to Charleston, but I like it here better, she said. When Florence made landfall, White's friends out of state kept her updated with news of road closures and open grocery stores. A friend had told her about the reopening of Whole Foods. Near the Whole Foods, another grocery store opened, as well as a gas station with long lines. A Dunkin' Donuts couldn't sling hot donuts and iced coffees at its customers fast enough. A 2016 UNC report called Wilmington's schools hyper-segregated between black and white. They're not the only aspects of life segregated seemingly in Wilmington. Now the recovery effort since Hurricane Florence's departure has served to highlight disparities among residents. In Blanks' neighborhood, unlike the one down the street, there is no open grocery store with air conditioning to hang out in, just a small convenience store with cigarettes, beer, and wine on most shelves. I think they're going crazy or delusional because the easiest thing to get right now is drugs. Everybody is smoking and drinking, but there's no food being put in their body to balance them, Blanks said. Blanks was born and raised on Wilmington's North Side, where the median income is between $14,000 and $17,000 a year, said Good Works volunteer Kristen McKeithen, 39, as she walked by to let people know that hot meals were available at the local community college that is well below the city average of $43,000, according to the U.S. Census data. Many residents feel the recovery from Florence is taking place more slowly in the north side than other parts of town. Joseph Cobbs, who grew up in this neighborhood, has a theory why. They don't want you to come up. Look at where you are right now. All the white people around us got power. We got none. He yelled over the roaring generator, sitting in a broken white plastic lawn chair in a friend's front yard. That one and two others are powering the entire block. No one comes to help us, so we help ourselves. The generator at Cobb's Friend's house turned off 3 times in 10 minutes. Without pause, the retired military man's friend fired it up again before the duo hopped into a truck. Cobbs limped into the passenger seat. He has a spinal injury. To hunt for work, to pay for gas, to keep the generators going. They need to keep it running for the neighborhood to use. At her mother's house, just down the road from Cobbs, Blanks agreed that's just the way it always is. The neighborhoods get fixed up first around here. Their neighborhoods get fixed up first. Their streets get fixed up first around here. And when the power goes out, they go to them first. Blanks counted the days she can go back to work. She's not getting paid during her days off after the hurricane. The $1,000 a month she makes after taxes covers her rent and bills, but with just enough for food. She makes too much to qualify for food stamps, she said. White and Monkey Junction had lunch at Whole Foods, charged some electronics, and was hoping to go back to work at the airport on Wednesday, where she works in customer service for Delta. It's my retirement job. I was a teacher, she explained. She doesn't have to work, even though she offered to go back in. I've got to start living a normal life while you can and go back to work. I do it for fun. In thriving historic downtown Wilmington, neighbors are also helping neighbors, but the atmosphere is different. Co-owner of the gastropub The Husk, Justin Smith, 46, was doling out beer, hot dogs, and burgers on Sunday for regulars. Loud, crowded, and festive, the atmosphere resembled a block party as people spilled onto the sidewalk. Everyone around us helped us in some way, whether it was gas, buns, or wings, he explained, and we got the Panthers on, and it has been a really unifying effort. Blanks hasn't had meat since before the storm. I'm dying for meat, a nice juicy T-bone steak that I can cook myself. They say there are some places out there in Monkey Junction that are open, she said, getting ready to drive around looking for food in the wealthier parts of town. Her friend Cheryl Porter, 31, chimed in, mashed potatoes and corn. Then with a smirk she added, after this hurricane, I might as well go vegan. And that is how that is going. Also, this article from Vox, this is from Updated Today. Hog manure is spilling out of lagoons because of Hurricane Florence's floods. What hurricanes reveal about our neglected time-bomb toxic waste sites. As the floodwaters from Hurricane Florence's punishing rain continue to rise and potential environmental health disasters looming at North Carolina's increasingly stressed hazardous waste sites from hog manure lagoons to coal ash dumps. The hurricane, which downgraded to a tropical depression as it made landfall last week, drenched the southeast with a gargantuan amount of rain, as much as 50 inches in some places. The storm has killed at least 37 people, and several flooded rivers in North and South Carolina are still rising. As with other recent disasters like Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, some of the most insidious dangers may emerge in the aftermath. The specific concern is that people could get sick from toxic chemicals and infectious bacteria if waste facilities are overwhelmed from flooding and their contents spill into the water supply. The environmental health risks of the flooding are especially acute in North Carolina, which has a massive livestock sector concentrated in the eastern part of the state, same region hardest hit by the storm. North Carolina is second only to Iowa in hog production. Duplin County in North Carolina has 45 times as many hogs as humans. It's second in turkeys behind Minnesota, and it's third largest poultry producing state overall in the country. The storm itself has killed at least 5,500 pigs and 3.4 million chickens. All these animals produce feces and urine, which can contain pathogens and dangerous chemicals. Around large farms, this waste is often contained in anaerobic lagoons. These are pits usually around 8 feet deep and lined with clay to limit leaks. The animal waste in the lagoons undergoes anaerobic digestion, where microorganisms break down many of the substances into carbon dioxide and methane. Yay! The treated waste is then used as crop fertilizer. In North Carolina, there are more than 3,300 of these lagoons associated with hog farms. These pits are not sealed from above, so rain can accumulate and overtop the pits, allowing untreated animal waste into the water. They're designed to absorb 19 inches of rain, but the torrential downpour wrought by Florence has exceeded that limit in several areas. The Department of Environmental Quality reported Wednesday that 4 lagoons had structural damage. 9 were inundated by floods, and 13 had overtopped. Inundated means flood water levels have risen above the top of the lagoon, and overtopped means enough rain accumulated within the lagoon to flow out of the container. The department also noted that 55 lagoons are at or very close to their maximum capacity, threatening to overflow with pig waste. More damage and health threats may be revealed as the waters recede. Waters from the record-shattering storm are rising in some places and receding in others, and we expect further impacts to be reported as conditions and access allows. The rainfall from another waste hazard in North Carolina comes from coal ash. Burning coal to produce energy leaves behind ash, which contains toxic heavy metals and radioactive materials, substances that can lead to cancer and neurological damage. Yay! The rainfall from Florence has caused the walls of a coal ash landfill near Lake Sutton, near Wilmington, North Carolina, to collapse. There are 31 coal ash disposal sites in North Carolina, all owned by Duke Energy. Many are located on or near its 2 main rivers in the east, the Cape Fear River and the Neuse River, as well as other bodies of water. Duke Energy has said the spills were limited and pose no threat to the public. As of Wednesday, the company reports that the breach has been closed. That's all I'm going to read of that article. It's not that much longer anyways, but I'm going to list it below. Also, somebody was asking in the comment section about the fact that the Brunswick nuclear plant was undergoing a hot shutdown as of 2 days ago, and that workers could not get in or out of the nuclear plant. Apparently, the site has updated and said that they are no longer at risk, but other than that, there's been no communication about the Brunswick nuclear plant. What's going on there, if they're still in a hot shutdown or not. So who was it? Random Variable was the one that was asking about information and trying to see if somebody knew anything. I looked up a few things and all I could see was, stuff from like 2 days ago. So there's been none or very little update about the Brunswick nuclear plant and what is going on there. Not good. Moving on. Okay, so I also wanted to, I'm going to link a video that Henry linked in the comments. It's a good video and good and scary. The video is titled "Why Everything Will Collapse," and it's about 15 minutes long. It was published on December 25th, 2017, and just goes through what most of us already know as the reasons why things are going the way they are. But anyways, worth watching, and so I'm going to link it below. I hope you all enjoy it. I'm going to finish with this article from yesterday. Melting Arctic permafrost releases acid that dissolves rocks. That does not sound good. This is from Live Science by Mindy Weisberger. As temperatures rise in the Arctic, permafrost, permanently frozen ground, is defrosting at an alarming rate. But the permafrost isn't the only thing in the Arctic that's melting. Exposed rock that was once covered in ice is dissolving, eaten away by acid, and the effects of this acid bath could have far-reaching impacts on global climate, according to a new study. Icy permafrost is rich in minerals, which are released when the ice melts. The minerals then become vulnerable to chemical weathering or the breakdown of rock through chemical reactions. Scientists recently reported they investigated areas once covered by permafrost in the western Canadian Arctic, finding evidence of weathering caused by sulfuric acid, produced by sulfide minerals that were released when the permafrost melted. Another type of naturally occurring chemical erosion is caused by carbonic acid, and it also dissolves Arctic rock. But although carbonic acid weathering locks carbon dioxide in place, sulfuric acid erosion releases CO2 into the atmosphere. And it does so in quantities that were not previously accounted for, researchers wrote in the study. Dramatic changes are underway in the Arctic, which is warming twice as fast as any other location on Earth. Sea ice is rapidly dwindling. which reduces the ocean's heat-reflecting cover, accelerating the rise of ocean temperatures, and polar bears, which depend on sea ice cover to hunt for seals, are losing their hunting grounds and have a harder time finding enough to eat. On land, melting permafrost is shaping new landscapes through a process called thermokarst, a term for thawing-driven erosion that originated in Russia, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. Thermokarst creates land formations such as lakes, pits, and sinkholes, and it was previously unknown how this process could affect weathering of exposed minerals and how that might then impact CO2 release, according to the study. These processes may influence the permafrost carbon climate feedback, but have received little attention, the scientists reported. Over geologic timescales, weathering caused by carbonic acid can help to regulate climate. By trapping CO2 and restricting its transfer into the atmosphere, but the researchers found that the thermokarst in regions that were rich in sulfides drove production of sulfuric acid rather than carbonic acid, and thereby released quantities of CO2. An estimated 1,400 billion tons of carbon are stored in permafrost. Life Science previously reported, and as thawing continues and thermokarst activity intensifies, sulfide-rich regions will continue to transfer CO2 from its icy tomb. However, how that will balance out against the permafrost regions that still produce carbon-trapping carbonic acid is unknown, according to the study. The findings were published online September 5th in the journal Geophysical Research Letters. All right, more good news, as in bad news. That's all I have for you tonight. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. And I want to thank you again for all your comments and your discussion in the comment section below. And as always, I appreciate your links. And thank you. Keep them coming. I will be back tomorrow with another video. Until next time, peace.